So one more reminder to please look in the chat and download that document. And with that, we are going to start recording. So thank you again so much for joining us today for the second in our series of workshops on educator recruitment and hiring. This session is on developing and enhancing social recruitment through social media and through use of current staff. My name is Megan Steiner. I am the state lead for K-12 human capital strategies on the statewide school improvement team. And when I say human capital, that sometimes means different things to different people. For our purposes, it refers to all the processes in helping ensure that our students have the best educators, staff, support staff they can, from the recruitment and hiring of teachers, counselors, leaders, paras, nurses, et cetera, through developing them, retaining them, et cetera. And for those of you who are watching a pre-recorded version of this, you'll notice there's a text box here about looking in the chat for a note-taking template. Now, if you're watching the pre-recorded version, you can look at the site that you linked to this video from, and you should be able to find a link to download a document called Social Recruiting Note-Taking Template. For everyone, whether you're participating via the pre-recorded video or right now live, it's important that you do download this, save it to your own computer, because this is called a workshop for a reason. It is not just me talking at you, although there will be some of that, but you will also be responding to prompts, looking at some examples, taking notes on them in your own document, and using that to help inform next steps or share information or make decisions with colleagues. And as any other folks come in, we will continue to post that document in the chat for them. So moving on, as I mentioned, this is a part of a series. It's a series of lunchtime meetings that will continue through the end of April. And as I referred to earlier, these will be recorded and posted on the YouTube channel for PDE Accelerated Learning. Also, my email address is here if you have any questions about the session. So I'm going to wait for just a little moment in case anyone wants to copy down that email address in case they have later questions. All right, so moving on. As I mentioned, this is the second in a series. Last week, we had our first one, the session on effective practices for the employment websites within a school or LEA's website. And that will, if you missed it, that will also be posted on the aforementioned YouTube channel. The future sessions are on creating general education job descriptions to attract your best fit candidates, creating special educator job descriptions to attract your best fit candidates, implementing or refining a uniform teacher interview process that aligns with LEA priorities, implementing or refining a uniform school leader interview process that aligns with LEA priorities, and implementing or refining the use of demonstration lessons in the hiring process. And as you did for this session, you can register for those through the Patton website. Now, the objectives for this session will be to be able to identify effective practices for social media recruitment that can be applied to your own LEA's needs, contexts, and recruitment budgets, if there is any. Identify effective practices for leveraging current staff and educator recruitment, and begin planning how to apply these practices to your own recruitment strategies. So for the agenda for this session, we'll first start talking about social media recruitment, including considering the type or types of applicants that you're targeting through your recruitment, and the types of messaging you are using or could use in social media. Then we'll talk about leveraging current staff, particularly two main strategies. One is more common and a lower lift for staff, which is referral campaigns. The others, which can involve more intensive staff participation, are using talent ambassadors. That may be a phrase you haven't heard before, or maybe you've heard it, but it was called something else. But in any event, you'll find out what that means a little bit later. Now, that will be for about the first 45 minutes of this session. The last half hour is optional but encouraged LEA planning time. And I'll get a little bit into what that means later. But essentially, if you are participating in this webinar with one or more other people from your LEA, you will be able to go into a breakout room with them and actually start using what you saw in this session to plan next steps for how you can do recruitment or make changes to recruitment. If you are the only person who happens to be participating in this webinar from your LEA, we'll also have ways for you to reflect and consider next steps in the main breakout room. Now, if you joined us a little bit recently in the last few minutes, you'll notice it refers to looking in the chat for a note-taking template. So we'll upload that again to the chat for anyone who just joined us, but we have uploaded it several times, I notice. Awesome. And so if you did just join us, that is a document that's important to download and save to your own computer, because we will be using it and actually looking at some links and responding to some questions in there throughout this session. So moving on, social media recruitment. So recruiting through social media not only helps to spread the word more broadly about job openings, but can help with earlier hiring and can help your LEA stand out by putting your best or most important characteristics at the forefront for potential candidates. Someone just asked about the PowerPoint slides being available also. I cannot guarantee, but I believe that they will also be available on the PDE Accelerated Learning website around the time this is posted as a YouTube video. So good question, thank you. So moving on, first we have a couple of reflection questions to think about. These are not in the note-taking template. These are just for you to think about on your own. So first of all, when you think of recruiting through social media, who do you think of as the target audience or audiences? And secondly, have you personally noticed any employers using social media to publicize job openings? Not just employers in the education field, but generally in any field. And if so, what did you think of those posts? So just think through that for a moment. And if you'd like to share your answer to question number 2 in the chat, I invite you to do so. In terms of if you've seen any employers from any field using social media to publicize job openings, what was your reaction to those posts? You know, did they seem likely to get attention? Did they seem like they were showing off the good aspects of the job? Did they seem like they were too general? What did you think of them, if you remember seeing any? Some positive posts, okay, good. That's good, so people have seen positive, engaging ones. Yeah, definitely a few people mentioned links to the employer site or links to more information. That's very important. Employee videos, definitely. If any of you participated in last week's session on employment web pages, we talked a lot about how you can use testimonials from your current teachers, staff, even students, whether they're written testimonials or video testimonials, to show prospective staff why they should want to work there. And that's something you can include in social media posts. So moving on, when you think about current use of social media in your district, and some people are already mentioning that in the chat, your LEA, your individual schools, or individual educators may already sometimes use social media for recruitment. So first think, are you aware of anyone in your LEA doing this? Or if you aren't sure about it, how could you find out? And then how effective has it been? And again, if you aren't sure how effective it's been, how could you find out? So those are, again, just self-reflection questions. If you don't know the answer to one or the other, think, okay, who would know? Are any of our principals using social media for recruitment? Are any teacher leaders doing this, et cetera? So as you're thinking about that, we will move on to another question that is actually in that note-taking template. So if you don't have it open, you can open it up now and look towards the top of it. So consider ways that your LEA and or individual schools already use social media. How could you integrate educator recruitment into these uses? So you can respond in the note-taking template. It's a little hard to see on Zoom, huh? At the top, there's a box asking about this. So for example, you might already be using social media to have groups for parents or families, certainly to provide updates on COVID protocols, safety protocols, announcements about important dates and events, maybe to share suggestions for education resources or other resources for families. So just maybe make some notes in that note-taking template there about what are some ways we're already using social media at the school or district level? How could we integrate recruitment for educators, for any staff jobs, into that existing use of social media? And we'll just take a minute or so to take notes on that in your own document. And before I move on, there are, as you'll see, a number of questions in the note-taking document, and there's no expectation that you are able to think of every single answer right now. These are just to start you thinking. You might come back to it later. You might ask a colleague about some of these questions. You might bring it to a meeting about recruitment and hiring, anything like that. So these next few slides, if you participated in last week's session on employment websites, these slides will be familiar to you, but they are also useful in deciding how to recruit via social media. So these slides ask about what are the characteristics of the candidates who usually apply and or those who you're targeting in your recruitment. So in the next section on the note-taking template, you'll see it asks about various characteristics of the type or types of folks who you're aiming for in your recruitment. And it might be you don't know all of these answers. That's fine. But as you're jotting down some notes about that, I'll give some examples. So as one hypothetical example, there might be a small town where the applicants are primarily local, have several or more years of teaching experience, have children at home, and are parents of children in the same school system. In another example, a hypothetical district in a low-income urban area might have applicants who are describing themselves as mission-driven, as intending to work in a low-income community. Of course, that could also apply to rural communities or other types of communities. They may be applicants who want to work with similarly minded colleagues. They might have less career experience, and they may be more likely to be teachers of color. So think about these various characteristics and who are you targeting in your recruitment materials? Another thing I'll mention in terms of what types of candidates, when we think of social media, we may think of millennial and Gen Z educators. However, a variety of ages and demographics use social media for entertainment, for socializing, news, learning about what's going on in the local community, etc. There are certainly stereotypes about which platforms are used more or less by different age groups, but generally getting it out there in a variety of platforms can help reach everyone. And we'll talk a bit about different platforms in a moment. So as you're looking at the note-taking template and thinking, what are the characteristics of these applicants? Also look at the next set of questions. So considering the type or types of likely candidates and any other candidates you hope to attract, what are they looking for in a job and in a school environment? And importantly, for number 2, if you don't know, how can you find out? Finally, how can you show, not just tell, what your LEA offers? Now, again, if you were in last week's workshop, you've already seen these sorts of questions. You can reflect on how you answered last time. But for everyone else who may be seeing these questions for the first time, write down your thoughts in the note-taking template. And if you have any thoughts for question number 2, if folks aren't sure about the characteristics of their applicants, how can they find out? Some questions, some answers that surfaced last time were, you can ask your recent hires those sorts of questions, like what interested them in the district or the school. You can ask your current student teachers, what are they looking for in a job opportunity? These can be ways to find out who are the sorts of people you're targeting when you're recruiting. So take a couple minutes to respond to those questions in the note-taking template. And if you do have any ideas for question number 2, if you or any colleagues in other districts aren't sure how to answer these questions, any other thoughts on how they could find out? All right, so moving on for now. So moving on to messaging and social media. So what is the content of the message? So of course, keep in mind that unlike someone who navigates to a district employment page, navigates to PA Educator, PA Reap, or a job platform site like that, people who view social media posts about job openings almost always were not actively seeking information about employment at that particular moment. So you need to quickly attract the attention of your target audience and consider what information is a priority for that audience. It's also a great idea to link to additional information. People mentioned that in the chat, link to a district site, link to information from current staff, et cetera. Include a picture, include a video, but make sure the main content that someone doesn't have to click on to see is also attention grabbing on its own. And in fact, I was just this morning, I happened to be speaking to an assistant superintendent who mentioned that through some staff posting on their own social media, they had, during the past school year, recruited and hired a couple of teachers in emergency cert positions. Now, of course, those were folks who did not yet have certification and may not have been thinking about working for the district before they saw these posts from folks in their own social networks. So now we'll talk about a few different frames for messaging in social media, a few different perspectives to highlight. And as I go through these, you'll notice again in the note-taking template, towards the bottom of the first page, there is another table to take some notes in, to think about how would you communicate the following types of information in a social media
Katie,
post.
please come in.
I'm sorry, sounds like someone's unmuted. Anyway, so as we're going through these types of information, obviously a single social media post cannot include a ton of different information. You might have different posts for different types of audiences, but think about how could you communicate these to different in different social media posts. So first of all, who are you? Your LEA or school characteristics, you know, how big, demographics of students. Do you have any special programs that might be enticing? Do you have achievements or improvements to brag about? Not just the traditional quantitative metrics we might think about, but, you know, did attendance go up a lot since the beginning of the pandemic? Did you have positive impact of an SEL program? Are your English learners succeeding at a higher rate this year? Did a student poll show that students think this is an engaging place to learn and a safe place to be? Anything like that, any little blurb you can include about things that are going well or improving in your district or your school. And as I'm talking about this, again, you can be taking any notes in the note-taking template about these different types of information. Also, who is your community? So the location, the type of community, rural, urban, town, suburbs, what have you, demographics of the community. If you participated last week, we talked about showing off the local attractions, culture, recreation, especially if you're not in an area people know a lot about, you know, you're not in Pittsburgh, you're not in Philly, et cetera. Basically, if someone who's new to the area is interested in a job, what should they know about your community to make them more interested? The next category for messaging are employee characteristics. Who are you looking for? So those would be obviously certification areas, right? What roles are you looking for the most? For a lot of people, that's special education, secondary science, et cetera, of course. What skills or qualities are you looking for in an educator in particular? Purpose, why are they looking for a job in teaching, or what sort of job or school are they looking for? Like they may be looking to work in a diverse school or to serve English learners, et cetera. The last two categories are benefits, and I mean beyond salary. Obviously, that is going to be something of great interest for anyone looking for any sort of job. What are the other benefits you offer? Salary, insurance, obviously those things, but what else, such as are there special types of professional development or career advancement or opportunities for leadership or extra stipends, opportunities to work in after school, weekend, or summer programs? Are there degrees of extra autonomy for certain teachers or staff? Can certain folks get flexible or part-time schedules? Do certain folks work from home sometimes? You know, it depends on the role, of course, and on the school and the setup you have. So what are the other things you offer that would entice people in addition to salary to want to work with you? And finally, endorsements. So who backs you up? So this could be awards or recognition for the LEA or the school. Are you a part of a network or association of schools that might tell us a bit about who you are? Can you provide links to any local news items about school programs, successes in the schools, a cool project the students did, something like that? And in the next section, we'll get further into how current staff can provide endorsements in addition to the kinds I just mentioned. So now we're going to look at some hypothetical examples for hypothetical districts and schools. And for each of these, look at the pair of them and contrast, you know, how will they likely impact viewers? So just take a couple of seconds to look through them, and then I'll point out some differences. You can also mention them in the chat. They'll likely be very similar. So this is the example if you wanted to focus on LEA or school characteristics. So you've probably noticed in the first example, we don't know anything about the district except its name. And that if I suppose we Google the district to get to its website for more information, we don't even know where on the website the information is, et cetera. Doesn't really provide much motivation or specifics about where to learn more. Whereas on the right-hand side, there's a little bit more about the educators, the size of the staff. We know some of the successes going on in the school. Those underlined sections imply that there are links to more information about this. And not only do we have the link to learn more, but this is something a lot of folks don't necessarily provide, a deadline. Now, of course, a deadline isn't always enforced. You might not get the folks you want to apply by a certain date, but maybe that's the priority deadline or an encouraged date by which to apply. The next section focuses on community characteristics. So I'll give you a moment to look through these two examples. So this example on the left-hand side does at least have a link to learn more about the local community. But if I'm not interested in following the link, I don't know anything about the town, especially if I'm from a different part of the state or from a different state. But on the right-hand side, it does give me a little bit of insight into the town. You don't have to be a huge city. You don't have to be particularly well-known to have things to show off about your community. And of course, there are also links to learn more about the community and about the job openings. The next one is about the employee characteristics. Who are you looking for? So let's take a moment to look at these examples. So of course, the one on the left is very broad, tells us what platform to look at, but not a direct link to know where the job descriptions are. And meeting PA requirements is a very broad thing to be looking for in applicants, whereas the right-hand side directly describes who they're looking for. I also want to point out this piece about knows the importance of supportive and effective school leaders. That's kind of a way of saying, well, showing we have supportive and effective school leaders. Like if you're someone who's looking for that and knows that's important to serving students and having a well-functioning school, you're showing off that that's what you provide. And again, there's links to learn more about the staff and about the open jobs. Now, this last section is about the benefits. So on the left-hand side, you'll see it has that phrase competitive salary that so many job posts have. Doesn't tell you very much. Whereas on the right-hand side, there's a link to information about the salary and benefits, as well as information about career ladder opportunities, stipends, flexibility, opportunity to be a leader and make decisions if you do take a teacher leader role. So some of the financial and non-financial benefits that people may be seeking. So moving on to choosing your platform. So start with the social media platforms you already use and ask your current staff what they and their friends use most often. For any accounts, consider who will update them and how often, because recently updated accounts with current hiring information can provide a positive first impression to applicants. For any platform, check out which hashtags appear in other posts about job openings in the area or for the same role, like ed jobs or diverse teachers or special educators, etc. And I noticed there are some questions in the chat, and I will try to get to them before we end. So similar to using hashtags, consider joining LinkedIn groups for educators who are job seeking. And if you go to the end of the note-taking template, there will be additional resources. And on that additional resources list, there is a list of best LinkedIn groups for education professionals. So those are just some suggestions. Now, this next part I'll just talk about briefly because I know not everyone has a budget to use for this sort of recruitment. But if you do have a budget, you can pay, perhaps some of you already do pay, to boost your posts on platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, or at least could do that during peak hiring season. You can use Google Ads to boost your content when users search relevant keywords, like if someone searches Pittsburgh area science teacher job. And the content of your ads should have language similar to that on the LEA employment site, because this helps the site that the ads link to, because this helps boost the Google Ads algorithm. Now, that was brief, but under that section on additional resources, there is a link to a guide on social media recruitment, which does have some more specific information, including a sample budget for recruiting via social media. It suggests starting with a budget of $10 per day, but there's some more detailed information on that document about what to do if you have a budget. So we'll move on to section 2, leveraging current staff. So a couple of reflection questions to start off. If someone you knew told you about a job opening with their employer, what else would you want to learn about the job from this person before you considered it? And if your current staff tells other educators about what it's like to work in your LEA, what do you hope they'll mention? So just consider that, to yourself as we move on. So here's another question, and this is something you can respond to in the note-taking template. And this is on page 2 of the note-taking template. Thinking about the type or types of candidates you are targeting, who would they most likely trust to give them advice about jobs? Is it someone who recently graduated from their prep program or their university? Is it someone who has the same role, like a special educator? Is it someone they have some connection to through a friend? Is it someone who has a ton of experience? So just think about who would they most likely trust to give them advice about jobs, and then how does that help you determine who might be useful to involve in recruitment efforts or to refer people to apply to your district? Which brings us to referral campaigns. So if you are launching a referral campaign, no matter how small or large, you would want to have someone coordinating it. HR staff, admin assistant, a teacher leader, perhaps in a small LEA, who can lead the communication with the staff about the referrals, track referrals that are going out, send follow-up communications to candidates who are referred by your current staff. Now, to make this simpler, you can create an online form like a Google form where staff can share referrals. Like, okay, so I used to work with this science teacher and I'm going to provide her contact information. And then I'm going to send her this pre-written blurb about our school. Now, in terms of communicating with your current staff, since they'll be implementing the referral campaign and referring folks that they know from their own networks for whether it's certified jobs or support staff jobs, be clear about why the campaign is important for the school, staff, and students. And encourage staff to think about how a personal referral from someone else might influence their own decisions about where to work. Now, to make things simpler for current staff, you can write template communications to send to the referred candidates. So these can be sample emails and phone scripts that all staff could use with their referrals. and which align with your recruitment materials and reinforce the same messages. And these can also have sample emails and phone scripts that the person coordinating this campaign can use when following up with referred candidates. Now, for examples of this and more information about this, again, on that additional resources section at the end of the document, there is a document called Staff Involvement in Virtual Recruiting, and it has some examples there, as well as sample candidate referral messages. So I just encourage you to check out all the links in that section, basically. Now connect your referral campaign to your social media use. So also make templates for social media posts that all staff can use to share with their networks, and use those effective practices for recruitment via social media that we discussed. And be sure that viewers of these posts know where to go for more information. So if you're asking, all of your teachers, paras, et cetera, to post about a special education position, well, make sure that someone who views that post knows not to ask their neighbor's friend's cousin on Facebook for more information, the person who posted it, but to actually contact someone who's in charge of that position and hiring for that position for more information. Now, a potential drawback of referrals and word of mouth recruitment can sometimes be that if the vast majority of a school staff are white educators and you're trying to diversify your staff, it's possible that their networks may mainly include other white educators and may not help so much with a diversifying attempt. So emphasize your intentions and reasons for diversifying your staff. Now, this can also apply to, let's say your staff is very experienced, but you also want staff earlier in their careers, or you have younger staff, you're looking for more experienced folks. Just be clear about that. Now, again, if you have a budget, if you do, you could provide financial incentives for successful referrals, and could also provide a group reward like a meal or gift cards for the school with the most successful referrals. Now, very importantly, often overlooked, is it working? Track the implementation and results. So check in with staff about whether they are sending individual referrals. Ensure the campaign manager, the people who are in charge of this campaign, are following up with qualified referrals regularly. So when that special education candidate is referred by a colleague and they do apply, make sure someone's tracking, are they actually going through the application system? Are they still involved? Are they still interested in the job, et cetera? And track referral applications and let staff know when you're making job offers to the candidates that they referred themselves, so your staff can encourage the candidates to accept. Now I'm going to talk about the last topic for today, talent ambassadors. This refers to folks who are way more involved sometimes than just providing a referral in the recruitment process. So the size and scope of this role can vary quite a bit. It could be smaller, like someone who sends a pre-written form email when a candidate applies to their school or to a position with a similar role. Like, okay, we have 3 elementary schools in our district, and whenever someone applies to an elementary special education position, Mr. So-and-so is going to send out a pre-scripted email saying, I'm Mr. So-and-so, I'm a special educator at one of our elementary schools, and here's a few sentences about why I think it's a good place to work. It could just be being available to answer any questions that candidates have via phone or email. Or it could be more proactively involved, like participating in job fairs, visiting ed prep programs to recruit their candidates, etc. So if you have folks interested in this sort of role, you could use a brief form application to ask why the folks who may become talent ambassadors are interested in the role and what they'd like to share about your school or LEA. And consider whose work embodies the strengths and goals of your LEA. And also you want to represent the diversity of your staff. when you're preparing these ambassadors, consider what are the uniform messages you want to share about your school or LEA? Like, are there certain recent successes you want to be sure everyone shares, certain benefits of working there you want to be sure everyone shares? But also importantly, discuss tough questions that will likely come up with candidates about drawbacks to working in your district or concerns people may have. Encourage ambassadors to be positive but honest, because you want to be sure you are recruiting the right people who are actually prepared for your schools. If you have students who have particular needs, behavioral needs, for example, you want to be recruiting people who are prepared for that situation and aren't going to be blindsided. Now, again, if you have a budget, you can provide a financial stipend to talent ambassadors. And this is especially relevant for those with more in-depth roles, like those who are attending recruitment events, because that really is putting in work above and beyond. And finally, and importantly, is it working? So have an easily accessible way to track the talent ambassadors' virtual or in-person contacts with candidates, like a Google spreadsheet. And note any correlation between high-touch candidates and those who accept jobs. By high-touch candidates, I mean folks who have engaged with the talent ambassador, email, phone conversation, talk to them at a job fair, anything you can track like that. And let the ambassadors know when candidates are hired, candidates who they've been involved with, so they can see the outcomes of their recruitment work. So we're going to go into LEA planning time, and this is going to include time for folks to ask any questions or share any additional comments. I did want to be sure to finish in time, and as you may have noticed, there are a lot of slides in this presentation. And I know folks had some questions, so there is going to be time to ask those questions and make additional comments. But before we get into that, as I mentioned, the rest of this time is optional. Whether you're staying for this time or not, my last request of you is to please fill out the survey that is linked at the bottom of the note-taking template. It's very useful for us when you do that. Last week's session had about 100 people and about a quarter of them filled out the survey, which, is better yield than you get sometimes. But let's try to beat that session and have more people fill out the survey. It is 4 questions. It's helpful to us if you fill it out to help inform our future work. And beyond that, if you are staying for part or all of the next half hour, and you are participating with colleagues from your LEA, so one or more other people from your same LEA, you can look in the breakout rooms and manually put yourself in the breakout room with your district or LEA's name on it. And then you can use this document you've been filling out and discuss the notes you've been taking with your colleagues. You'll also see there's a next steps section on page 2 about what to do next, who should be involved, important messages to communicate via social media. And you can also feel free to return to the main room with any questions. So anyone who does want to go into a breakout room with colleagues from their district or LEA, you can do that right now. But if you're the only person from your LEA who is participating in this webinar, and you can stick around, you can stay in the main Zoom room and you can ask any remaining questions you might have, share ideas for next steps, or mention effective practices already used by your own LEA. It says website, but I should have actually added website or via social media or current staff. So any of these effective practices, basically, if you want to brag about something going well in your own LEA that may help others, you can do that too. So I'm going to give folks a moment to sort themselves into breakout rooms if they like. And I'm going to look at, I know there were a couple of questions that were asked in the last 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to look at those. So one was about sharing the presentation in the Google Drive. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to take my pen and make myself a note right now to do that, to put it in, to make sure I'll make sure it's either available in the Google Drive or on the Accelerated Learning website. Because because I know it can be very useful to go back and look at the slides in the future. And the next question was, so last week websites were shared that demonstrated characteristics. Are you able to share some LEAs that have quality HR social media posts? That's a really good question. Thank you. I believe that in one or two of the documents linked under additional resources, there are some examples. However, because social media posts are so much more ephemeral than websites and just they're changing so much more often, it was harder for me to find current or current posts that were reflecting those sorts of characteristics, which is kind of why I mushed all of those together into those example posts that were on the slide deck. But that is a great question. And I would also encourage you to, if you're looking for examples and thinking about content for social media posts, some of the content from those websites we looked at last time, like the video testimonials or the upfront information about the hiring process, those are things that can be mentioned, linked to, summarized in social media posts as well. So those could possibly also work as examples. If I did have more concrete examples from specific districts at this point, I would share them. But I think all I have is some things that may have been included from the additional resources section. So any other, from folks who are staying in the main room, any other questions or any reflections on what you might do next with your own recruiting efforts based on what we discussed here? And if you're in the main room, you can also look at page 2 of the note-taking template. Oh, that didn't show up. And think about those next steps, like what are the most important messages to communicate via social media recruitment? What next steps would be useful for involving staff in recruitment? Who should be involved? What role could staff take on? And if you'd like to share any of those thoughts you have about next steps or any questions you have, you can do so in the chat. And if it's easier for you to unmute yourself, I think at this point we'll allow folks in the main room to unmute themselves, if that's just easier for you.
Yeah, hi, this is Hector Bonilla from the Eastern Area School District.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, how are you today?
Very good, thank you. I did have a general question for you based on people that you've talked to or other districts that have employed this. We're looking to push for our first virtual fair in April for this district. We've participated in 2 national virtual fairs this year, but we're looking to do something a little more regional. And my question is, when it comes to kind of reaching out, and we have a high interest in promoting diversity, is in terms of what's considered etiquette if you're posting on other people's social media feeds that other people see in this regard. Because you have some forums, for example, on Facebook, they don't want to see advertisements. So that's not cool, that's not correct.
Oh, okay.
I'm just a little unsure that when it comes to something in the public interest.
You open a spot to make sure.
So it sounds like what you're saying is if you're, let's say, using Facebook and there's a Facebook group, should you post in there? And what I've usually seen people do, and what I think would be the expectation, is individuals can post on their own feed. And then if there's a group that is very clearly amenable to these sorts of, and this sort of information, like for education job seekers or local education group, that would make more sense to do. But posting in the neighborhood group about swapping seeds or something, which I'm in one of those, probably just wouldn't even make as much sense. Mostly people think about individuals posting on their own feeds, I think. That's a very good question, very specific to the topic as well.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So there's another question in the chat. Should be under the name of the individual or the school name? Oh, that's a good question. So I see. So if you're posting under a school account, here's what I would think. If it's not too much to manage, if it's not too much extra logistics to manage, having the HR director or someone involved in HR have their own account can be useful. Because it means that folks are, if they do reply directly, they're replying to the person who has the information. Now, that said, if you do have like the HR account and the main school or main district account, you do want them both posting messages, because the main account probably has more followers, more people checking it. You know, is today a snow day, that sort of thing. They're checking for that. But it can be useful to have both if it's not too much of a logistical burden. Would anyone like to share any thoughts on what your next steps might be? What you might do next? Or on things that you're doing in your own school or LEA that are going well in terms of social media recruitment or using referrals from staff? I see. So sharing posts with leaders and employees, definitely. Yeah. And if you're sitting there thinking, I'm not sure what my response is to these questions, and you're in the main room, I would encourage you to, again, look at page 2 of the note-taking template, or any of the questions on the template that you didn't get to, and just jot down some notes. And even make a note to yourself, like, maybe you're the person who is in charge of these decisions in your LEA, or maybe you need to talk to someone else about it. So maybe make a note, you know, is this, okay, so I wrote about what role staff could take on in the recruitment process. Well, who do I need to share that idea with? Or whose approval do I need? Or who should I ask about this? So you have some direct steps for yourself on this template. And I see there are a few people in the main room who have colleagues from the same LEA here. Now, you don't have to, but you could, if you wanted to, go into the breakout room with your LEA's name on it, if you know that there is someone else from your LEA participating. So there's just an alphabetical list of all those LEAs that have multiple people participating in the breakout rooms. Now, obviously, some of you are in a physical office and you're down the hall from someone, and it's easier to just go talk to them. But if that's not the case, we did create the breakout rooms for you. So I am going to stick around until 1:15, and we're going to also leave the breakout rooms open until then for folks who are using those. So if you do have any additional questions, comments, ideas, if you want to mention in the chat or take yourself off mute, you can do that. I'm going to make one final plug to please fill out that survey. That would be very helpful. And so if you're going to stick around, awesome. And if you have to go, if you're hungry, if it's lunchtime, I understand. Have a great rest of your day for those of you who have to go.
I did have one follow-up question, if I could, since it looks like we have an open forum here. In terms of optimization, has there been like a recommended generic hashtag list for things? Like, look, include these block of hashtags generically, this works, right? Because this is the first time we're going to be doing this. We've had, it's funny, we did have, just prior to COVID, the initial talk in the district, when we did actually pass a policy in terms of schools promoting school activities for parental engagement, student engagement with social media. And a lot of people were very reluctant doing this from the teacher end. They didn't want to be in a position where something could get misconstrued on a social media site and then create an issue. And part of the discussion I had as a principal at the time was, well, if it's completely factual and it's positive, you kind of figure that out pretty easily. really then it's not controversial. You're putting it out there and just talking about, our next choral concert. We're talking about a BTA fundraiser. We're just letting the awareness piece, and whatever you're doing in your classroom in terms of promoting, the good things that are happening in the district in your classroom. But in this case, it didn't look like anyone in that initial run used hashtags whatsoever. It was individual feeds putting it out there. And then later on over COVID, I started seeing more of the hashtag thing once we started seeing events happen in the news that people wanted to trend on. So then I really was becoming very aware that started creeping into some of the social media posting of our teachers as they're promoting, next steps, what we're doing, what the district was doing with COVID, that sort of thing. So I didn't know if there was something that's already been kind of worked out that we could at least, copy paste as an initial, stem.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've seen over time examples of popular hashtags, but not like any list of which are the most popular. And I imagine that would be regional anyway, or by state. But what I'm thinking is the best source for that, really the best source to get a perspective on reaching out to especially new educators, might be whoever has a relationship with your local prep programs or your current student teachers. Ask them, like, when people are job searching, what are they looking at? What hashtags are they using? And for that matter, people who are your current student teachers, if you have some, they might be using hashtags for job search, or it might not have occurred to them, in which case you can sort of get them thinking about that and already encouraging them to think about the hiring process and about your district, hopefully. So I wish I had a more specific answer, but
I appreciate that. That's just something that when I speak to my team, because we have a diversity alliance initiative going on in the Eastern Area School District, and one of the subcommittees of the different committees that we have formed is the hiring recruitment committee to expand on diversity in the district. So my attendance here, my role is as supervisor of curriculum instruction for the district, but I'm on that subcommittee. So I'm working with HR in this regard, along with other members of the subcommittee. And none of us have really been involved, including the HR director, on the social media side of things. And that's just something that when we begin this, it made a lot of sense to me, what you were saying earlier, to have basically a unified push on social media on various platforms under a school account, right? So that would, it would all go back to our school district and our school site on the LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the major ones out there.
Another thing that I didn't mention in the session is if there's so for folks who are in like a smaller town, for example, could even the local government's account mention something once or twice about like positions with the district, or the local chamber of commerce or something, because they obviously also have a vested interest in making sure you have the people you need working in your schools. And so there's another question, right, about the slides. So the PD has a website for accelerated learning that has a YouTube channel where the recording of this will ultimately be posted. And they told me that the link to that YouTube channel will be able to include the note-taking template document. So I'll ask them to also include the slides. Now, I don't have a timeline for when that will be available. At this point, since we only have a few people left, I'm going to show my email address. So if you're still on here and you want the slides now and not to wait for the YouTube channel, you can just email me today and I'll respond with the slides and whatever else. Yeah, any other questions, ideas? Anyone want to share something that is going well with online recruitment or recruiting through your educators in your districts?
I just want to share that as we were talking, I Googled hashtag popular for educational hiring. And there is a really good article on it's techfunnel.com.
Hmm.
TECHFUNNEL.com. It takes you through everything you need to know.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. If you have the link, you can put it in the chat if that's easy to do.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, we've got about 13 more minutes. If anyone does have any other questions or comments to share, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to stick around until then, and we'll keep we have folks in the breakout room, so of course we'll keep it open for them. But otherwise, if that's all you have for today, then have a great rest of your day, and thank you.